75 years ago today, on April 9th, 1945, Dietrich Bonhoeffer breathed his last breath on this earth. That's why today is Dietrich Bonhoeffer Day, and we want to honor him. And there's so much to talk about this man. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of his life and really get to some of my favorite points. These are some great books, though. I'd highly recommend this book, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, which is part of the Christian Heroes Then and Now series. Awesome resource for Kingdom families. And this book is also incredible. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Martyr, Prophet, Spy. Amazing, amazing man. If your sons are looking for heroes, this is a great man to emulate and to really focus upon and to learn from. Because that list of heroes recorded in Hebrews chapter 11, I'm convinced is still being penned in the heavens, and I would not be surprised at all if Dietrich Bonhoeffer's name is there. Dietrich Bonhoeffer came from a very Christian, a very just rich, as far as heritage is concerned, German family. He was one of 8 children. He was the youngest of 4 sons. And at the age of 13, he knew what he was going to do for the rest of his life. He was going to be a theologian. He was going to be a pastor. And even though his family was Christian, this was a big surprise, because the Bonhoeffers were just almost destined for more than just being a pastor. I mean, his brother worked alongside Einstein, and Dietrich had all kinds of opportunity, but he chose to pursue God and to devote the rest of his life to ministering to people the gospel of Christ. And what is so amazing for me about this man, my personally favorite part about this man's life, is that, many people find themselves in very hard times and they're forced to make tough choices. Well, this man saw World War I happen in his youth. He saw his country ripped to shreds in many ways. And then in his 30s, I guess it would have been, he saw a socialist workers' party take over, and specifically a man named Adolf Hitler take over, and he recognized the threat. And I think it's because the man had been looking at the truth so much that he instantly recognized the counterfeit. Well, guess what? He got out of Nazi Germany. He was in England for a time. He was even over here in the United States for a time. And he had so much opportunity. He was a very gifted man, just a very loving individual. Some people say that he's the most loving man that they ever met. And that's testimony of many people who he met in prison for his 2.5 years that he was roughly in prison. But he could have just sat back and relaxed. He had gotten out of the lion's den. And yet, because of his love, not only for God, but specifically for the German church, he saw the German church, the people being taken over by Nazism, compromising, and he went back into the lion's den. And for me, that is just an amazing testimony of courage. He knew that there were high risk involved, but it was worth the sacrifice. See, life is precious, but there's things more valuable than life, namely freedom. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer chose to fight for freedom. So he went back into Germany. Things were really bad. And he got involved in all kinds of conspiracies to take out Hitler. It's an amazing story, all of the connections he had. But long story short, he ended up getting taken by the Gestapo and thrown into prison. And for over 2 years, he was in prison. And yet even there, he ministered and he flourished. And the guards, many of them he would minister to, and they were scared and they felt bad about what they were doing. And he won their hearts so much that they allowed him to smuggle in and out paper and pen, and he wrote down some amazing works of Christian literature, my favorite being The Cost of Discipleship, where he compares cheap grace versus costly grace. Amazing resource. And it was all because he had ministered to these guards, and he ministered to people. And on April 8th, 1945, the day before he died, it was Easter Sunday, and Dietrich Bonhoeffer in a Gestapo prison with, I think, around 16 people, he preached his last service. They asked him to. One of the men there was even an atheist. He said, please do this. And he preached an Easter service. And as soon as the service was over, he said, amen. 2 guards came in and said, come with us. And he knew what that meant. And he looked at one of the prisoners, and this prisoner testified years later. These were Dietrich's last words to that group of people. He said, this is the end, but for me, it's the beginning of life. And he went and he spent the night in a very rough prison cell, very lonely, and yet he wasn't alone. And he got up the next morning. He was escorted up to the scaffold where he knelt, he prayed, and he gave his life on April 9th. 75 years ago today, he gave his life willingly. And one of the doctors there who saw Dietrich Bonhoeffer executed, by the way, let me mention, executed most likely, they say, from Hitler's own lips, pronouncing execute this man. Hitler died 3 weeks later, roughly. So I mean, Bonhoeffer almost made it. And yet this doctor said in 50 years of seeing people die, he never saw anyone so willingly and freely submit to death. And I mean, this guy was an amazing man. And so what my family is going to do on this day, we are going to celebrate the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and we are going to celebrate his death, and we are going to celebrate the example that he gave to us because it's beautiful and it gives God glory. So from our family to yours, happy Dietrich Bonhoeffer Day.